Rather than try to think strategically myself, what I'd like to give you is a couple of observations from the American point of view. And I add, I am no longer with the US government. Indeed, I am no longer with the East-West Institute. I am an independent voice, but as you say, a friend of Pakistan. And I want to give you some observations about what has happened and happening with American policy that I think can help to an extent in your definitions or your planning for what's possible ahead. And my brief overall mention here, which may seem enigmatic, is Pakistan has lost a great deal of importance in the minds of the leadership in Washington. What that means is that for 70 years, Pakistan has been seen by its location, and it's important to think of location, as just a geostrategic imperative. That question about location has changed. So let me make 3 points here. First is a point that you've mentioned. There is a focus now on the Indo-Pacific. This is different than making a focus on containing China. I believe there are voices in the Biden administration who are very experienced with China, people like Tony Blinken, people like Bill Burns at the CIA, Lloyd Austin. These people are not trying to say that they will try to stop the Chinese at every corner. They want to figure out where they can cooperate, where they can, but they also feel that they want to resist Chinese, what they see in their mind as malign Chinese behavior, where they must. So the Indo-Pacific has been defined then through organizations like the Quad as the organizing principle for the focus of American policy. Now, what does that mean, this first point about the Indo-Pacific? It means that Pakistan has been marginalized. The Indo-Pacific goes from Wagah to Wellington. That is to say, what has been at the center of American policy for many years, that is to say the Middle East, and this is my second point, the Americans are not looking at the Middle East. We can argue whether this is wise or not, but there is a sense of getting out of the so-called forever wars. This is an impulse towards getting out of Afghanistan. And this goes across political boundaries in America. There is a war weariness, a desire to get out of Afghanistan, and perhaps even in an irresponsible way. And I say this as a private citizen. There's a danger of America being irresponsible in getting out of Afghanistan. But it's not just Afghanistan. America is not paying the kind of attention to Iraq that it did. America is not doing in the reconstruction of Syria what it might. America basically will work on the JCPOA, and America will work on transformation of energy to a post-oil world. And that will change the way it looks at the Middle East. But what that means is that Pakistan, which was an integral part of these issues, Pakistan is on the far side now of the line of vision of the people in America who are looking at the Indo-Pacific. So the first point, Indo-Pacific means Afghanistan is peripheral rather than central. Exit from the Middle East means Afghanistan is part of a region that the Americans are staying away from, not looking to, with the exceptions of JCPOA and the ongoing commitment, as always, to Israel. So what does this mean? To me, you could say, oh my God, the Americans are basically taking 70 years of working with Pakistan in various ways and just saying, forget it. Well, what I would argue is Americans are going to look differently at Pakistan. This is an advantage, I think. Pakistan has an opportunity to reinvent itself. You don't see in the United States articles about terrorism in Pakistan anymore. You don't read about explosions in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. You read now and then about some residue issue that comes up. But basically, Pakistan has, and I have told this to Mr. Moeed Yusuf, and I hope also to you, Pakistan has a chance to redefine itself, to reinvent itself in the eyes of Americans. Now, obviously, you don't want to do this for the Americans, you want to do it for yourself. But I hear from your own discussions that this reinvention is important. And that's my third point, after focusing on Indo-Pacific and exit from the Middle East. The third point I want to make is your point about geoeconomics. Geoeconomics is not just a question of addressing pandemics, not just a question of addressing climate change, not just a question of trying to figure out how to build infrastructure. All these things are crucial, they're important, and very, very critical, not only for Pakistan, but for the world. Basically, I think both the general and the ambassador have alluded to this. Pakistan has missed many chances to join the kind of new economy that we see in the modern world. The tech-based economy, the services-based economy, the economy based on investment in your universities, the economy that is necessary for political reform so that the people who are running your parliament are not necessarily people who have just agricultural and textile interests and are infused in the lower end value-added industries, but to give a voice to the people in Karachi and Lahore who are tomorrow's leaders in technology, tomorrow's leaders in the new fields like artificial intelligence that will fundamentally change the way that Pakistan works. And this is where Pakistan's centrality and strategic importance, certainly for the United States, will grow if Pakistan becomes a modernized economy. Not because of where it is, but because of what it is. If Pakistan, in my opinion, can make this transformation that I think the Prime Minister, Mueed, and all of you have talked about, this transformation away from an economy that has not taken advantage of worldwide trends, if it can, then the question of whether you are physically in or out of the focus of America matters less. The question of whether or not your army faces another army, the traditional political and strategic questions become part of a broader geoeconomic question. So what I'm hoping to see is a time where Pakistan is not under the microscope because Americans are wondering about what happens in Afghanistan. There's going to be less attention to Afghanistan. That Americans are not going to be looking at Pakistan in the way that they looked at the time of the Baghdad Pact, or that they looked at the other times of resisting the Soviet Union. I believe Americans can, if Pakistanis show initiative, look to Pakistanis as a road towards understanding China better. I think Americans can look to Pakistanis, if diplomacy is adept, to open doors with Iran, to build like the other Arab states with Israel, to try to build in high technology. In other words, you have an opportunity to reinvent yourself because American focus is shifting away. And this is not necessarily a bad thing. It allows you to create, I think, a Pakistan that has all of the qualities that Moeed Yosef was talking about. The cohesion and especially the confidence that I think America wants to see in an ally in this region. So that's my message. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for a very, very fine presentation and good sound advice. And we really look forward to a constructive, forward-looking, business-like relationship with the United States. I have just one question, and of course, I don't expect you to answer it in very long terms, but there are people in the United States like John Meschmeyer who says that if China-US relations get out of hand and there's confrontation and conflict, then the United States is a superpower and a mean superpower, this is what he said, can force countries in the region to make a choice between, either with us or against us. So very briefly, if you can just reflect very quickly on it.
Yes, and believe me, let me emphasize this is a very personal assessment, not anything official. But I think the famous line that the American government gave to Pakistan, to General Musharraf, after the 9/11 attacks, this with you or against you kind of approach, I don't think that's likely to happen again.
Good, that's very, shall we say, satisfying.
The point here is, though, that it also means that America may not be there to engage on issues, for example, like Kashmir or Central Asia, when you want them. So there's a downside and an upside.
Ambassador Mantra, can I ask you one more question?
Certainly.
Will the United States play some kind of positive, constructive role in bringing about peace between India and Pakistan? Because peace is the foundation of the entire process, peace and development. And if there's no peace between India and Pakistan, I'm sorry, South Asia doesn't really have much of a future. Would you like to comment on that?
I certainly would like to see the good offices of the United States applied, especially on the question of Kashmir. And yet, this has not been something the Americans have wanted to do for decades. Increasingly, I am sorry to say that the point that I made about the line being drawn on Indo-Pacific thinking on India's western border makes this even less likely. So in plain English, I would not be terribly optimistic that the Americans will engage in India-Pakistan relations.